Morning, and happy Mother's Day, everybody. So, we will start with Refuge and Body. Page 14 in English. We'll do in English so we know what we're saying. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So taking time here to reflect on your great purpose for being here according to the Refuge and Body motivation for engaging and continuing to engage in these teachings, but starting here in the vast teachings on presenting the path to enlightenment, which is incredibly vast. And so that, you know, we gather together all the conducive conditions for us to understand and continue. So so we're up to the third module in the Discovering Buddhism, presenting the path. And this is, you know, on the foundation of the first two modules of mind and its potential, having an understanding of the working and functions of the mind, and then also an understanding, you know, how to meditate and so forth. So we've sort of present that as preliminaries, and then there's actually more preliminaries to come, but as we go through this module. So we've got that sort of foundation or context in which to put these teachings. And so we're talking about, you might have heard Lam Rim. So this literally means stages on the path to enlightenment, or the graduated path to enlightenment. So this module is giving an overview of that. And then as we come to subsequent modules of Discovering Buddhism, you'll see that each one of those topics we're doing more in depth. So the whole of the Lam Rim itself can be studied more in depth, more in depth, more in depth. This is where I like to do my show and tell. Book bag. So I'll just get out a few of these. Just commit these all to memory. No, it's not that. Don't freak out. It's not like that. Just to let you know. So we have a lot of references, because really, as we go along discovering Buddhism and then more in-depth studies, it's all on this. It's all, shall we say, more commentary, more understanding, deepening the topics of the Lam Rim, of the graduated path to enlightenment. So this is the total, sort of endeavor, I guess, of our life is to understand some of this. I'll get to that. So where do I start? So I'll start with Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. We'll go back and talk about Lama Atisha, but then who we attribute these teachings to. So we'll be looking at that today. But then Lama Tsongkhapa Kappa did an elaborate, as it says, treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, taking Lama Atisha's. In fact, he says in his homage that Lama Atisha is actually the author of the text, of this text, you know, and then. So this comes in 3 volumes of about that thickness, okay? So, and then more recently, Geshe Sopa Rinpoche, there's in the library, it's a sort of maroon with, you know, nice thin gold stripes, 5 volumes of that. So one can keep going. And then more, shall we say, recently, a century ago, Pabonka Rinpoche is the teacher of a lot of our teachers. His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so forth. So liberation in the palm of your hand. And so this, you know, some of you are nodding. So it is, this is seen as the go-to text for discovering Buddhism for all the subsequent modules. So it's a great reference to have access to. And it, you know, as we go along, what I like with both of these is they give you headings and subheadings, so you know where to look. And they also have an index. So I like to compare the index of one. Oh, actually, I'm not sure if that does. You have to go to the outlines. But that one and this one, this is more recent, Practicing the Path, Yangtze Rinpoche, which is also a commentary on this. So 2005, I think. And Yangtze Rinpoche is the director of Matripa College in Portland, Oregon, teaching high level studies. So he gives it a bit more contemporary flavor in terms of language and so forth. You know, some people find this a bit old school language or presentation as well, whereas Yangtze Rinpoche makes it, you know, you might find this, some people prefer this, Practicing the Path. And so these two I compare, I go to the index and see what this one says about the same topic, what that one says about the same topic. And this is indeed the way that our Geshes and so forth learn and study, and comparing different commentaries and so forth, so like that. And then if we want something a little bit shorter, this is Lamrim Outlines, or as it says, extended and Lamrim Outlines, Venerable Karen Vallum, who's at Kopan Monastery. And that's where the, well, it has been called up until now the November course, month-long course, of using this, right, as the basis for that in terms of getting the teachings, meditating. Nat's not in because she's been there, done that. And so it says it's a beginner's meditation guide. In other words, it takes all the points of each topic and just presents it in a very nice format, and how to meditate on that and so forth. So it's very, very accessible. And then we have even shorter. And this is what, at this point in time, I like to, there's a number of, apart from Lama Tsongkhapa, these elaborate, you know, 3 volumes, also did commentary, the Middling Lamrim, which is a little bit shorter, one of those volumes. But also in our prayer books, like the Gold Prayer Book here, you'll see there are Lamrim prayers. And these are shorter and said to be like glance meditations that encompasses the whole path to enlightenment. Of course, then we need to get teachings on what it's actually saying and what verse is what topic. Some of it's evident, some of it maybe not. I like to encourage people to commit to heart the shortest one, which is 14 verses, mere 14 verses, Foundation of All Good Qualities, because then you've got it in your mind. You know, you commit it to heart, you've got it in your mind. And, you know, if you die in the next moment, you've got it there in your mental continuum. But having it in your mind, you know, you can use those times when you're just waiting around to, oh, I think I'll just recite that. It only takes a few minutes. What is that? Chenrezig Institute, a couple of the students who were taking refuge, because I decided that in that week or whatever before, that they were going to commit it to memory, so that they then offered it to the Geshe when they, well, they didn't quite have it on memory. It was up on the screen. There was a bit of a cheating going on, but, but the aspiration was there, and he was totally overjoyed. He offered to the Geshe who just gave you a refuge. So that was a really delightful thing. It's a delightful memory from my mind. So, so anyway, there's that foundation of all good qualities, 3 principles of the path, and then the hymn of experience or song of experience or so forth, which is like the shortest commentary of Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on Atisha and the whole lineage of Lamrim, which is what we're looking at. So not to overwhelm you, but you also have the course readings. And in those, I really think the Nick Rebush's reading also goes through topic by topic. So it's sort of like got the headings there throughout the text, and you say, oh, we're on that topic, we're on that topic. So that's really useful, you know, nice summaries there. And just to see how, I mean, there are so many different commentaries. And so one, His Eminence Ling Rinpoche requested His Holiness Dalai Lama to give extensive teachings on these 18 core volumes or core texts of the Lamrim. And those were offered between His Holiness taught at the big monasteries in South India. But he went, you know, took turns around the big monasteries between 2012 and 2015. And that is, all that material is still online. The texts, the videos, the commentaries, Jamchuk Lamrim. So that's the website. So it's you know, we have so much available. Also get our, you know, our Geshe Zopa. We like to own him in WA, don't we? Has also from the teachings a shorter volume on the Lamrim, and which he offered a set of his teaching books at that point to every centre, but I couldn't see them in the library, but they're easy to find online. Lamrim, and the first part goes through Lamrim, and then the second part, if I've got it in the right order, Foundation of All Good Qualities, as a, you know, a commentary specific to each verse. And when at Chenrezig, when we were doing the 3-month Vajrasattva retreat, because Lama Zopa Rinpoche always encourages when we're doing retreats or so forth practices to insert Lamrim prayer and reflection. So we would take those topics. It was 3 months. So we'd spend a few weeks on each of the topics, taking a verse and taking turns, everyone in the doing the retreat to add some sort of personal points for us to reflect on. So it was a nice way of sharing and learning together. So that, you know, there's many different ways to approach the material. It's very rich and vast. I think maybe you're getting a sense of how rich and vast it is. And sort of it sets the direction, you know, for this lifetime for sure, but for all our future lifetimes. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, you know, I said a few years ago, there's articles in the Mandala magazine, which you can see online, where Rinpoche is giving advice for us as Westerners who must have realizations of the Lamrim and calm abiding, the sort of shamatha practice, calm abiding. So you've got the single pointed focus concentration and the Lamrim as an analytical meditation. That it's really important for the preservation of the Dharma, because a lot of the, you know, we see our Tibetan lamas, traditional lamas and so forth, who've passed away recently or in the last few years, quite a number of years, and they're saying the lineage is now in the West. well, the rest of the world, whatever the West is, East, West, North, South, out there in the world. So he's basically saying it's up to us to develop those realizations. And of course, Lama Zopa Rinpoche also says, I can tell how much somebody understands the Lam Rim by how they behave, which sort of makes you in his presence feel very nervous. And just from personal experience, I have good reason to feel very nervous. So I think Kanjala visited here in 2014, right? And then I was subsequently on retreat with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. When I say I was subsequently, I mean 400 other, 200, whatever. I wasn't there alone. But I had opportunity to see Rinpoche in person. And I had my mobile phone and I was showing Rinpoche a photo of Kanjala once when she had visited prison for us for a Liberation Prison project. And one of the guys there had given her an image that he had drawn of His Holiness Dalai Lama, had offered that to her. And Kanjala had said, I will offer it to His Holiness. And you know that she can because she lives right there in the same complex. So I was showing to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and then I put the phone down. And of course, I'm sitting on the floor and Rinpoche's on the couch and there's a table here. And I put it on the couch beside Rinpoche and he picks it up and puts it on the table. I did that twice. I didn't have to do it a third time. What was the problem with putting it on the couch? You don't put Dharma. And so to me, I think it's a phone, but it's Dharma. And I'm showing him, this holy being, and then putting up, you don't put where you put your bottom, right? So I was like, okay, I have not forgotten, but it took 2 times of mistake to, in a matter of minutes. Very embarrassing, really. Anyway, so of course, what do we do here? We put the Dharma high up, as high up as we can, and cover it in cloth so it doesn't get dusty, and respect it, and so forth. And you certainly don't put it where your bottom goes. I think at Vajrayana Institute, it took about 10 years for the Geshe to, for me to hear the words from the Geshe. I shouldn't have needed to hear these words, because what we would do, we didn't have the fold-up tables like this. And so when people were sitting on chairs, we'd put a text cloth on the chair and put the text on top. And he wasn't happy with that. For 10 years before I heard something, I mean, we immediately changed it, right? And put little tables down beside and made it. But, it's just like we don't realize even maybe when we're being disrespectful. So, our precious gurus are teaching us all the time. And, if we're able to listen and take it on board, it's a practice in mindfulness. So anyway, I'll give a little bit of the history of this presentation of the stages of the path, how it came about, the Lam Rim. And so it's basically gathers together all of the Buddha's 84,000 teachings in a very systematic, ordered way, in a progressive way for our practice, how we go from being an ordinary being up to becoming a Buddha. And so it's seen as stages, steps on that path, gradually developing our capacity. And in fact, capacity is, those of small, medium, great capacity. But really, we're talking about one individual's progress from where we are now to where we want to be and how to get there, right? So the origins are attributed to Lama Atisha. So in the 11th century. So Lama Atisha, just to give a bit of background of Lama Atisha, so generally what you'll see in the Lam Rim presentations, they talk about the greatness of the teacher and the greatness of the teaching. So when we talk about the greatness of the teacher, this comes along as a way of us understanding, and I appreciate it's the next module coming up, what qualities we're looking for in a spiritual teacher and so forth. So here, so Lama Atisha was born into, he was a prince. He was born into a, we say, good family. Now, if you look at kings and queens and prince, I mean, there's a bit of controversy going on these days in those families, just like in every other family. It's just you happen to be in the news headlines. I just think it'd be so terrible to be somebody famous that everybody's watching your every move. Anyway, so not so much, I like to think about it not so much from that point of view, but it gave him opportunity for education. And so that he was skilled in all the arts and sciences. He got a really good foundational education. And from a very young age, he was seen as having special qualities. He didn't have an interest or attachment, it is said, to things of this life. He, which most of us are very attached to. And he, having studied, we're talking quite a young age, I think maybe about before he was a teenager even. So he had this aspiration to get more teachings, to get a teacher. And he'd heard about this teacher, a Dharma teacher, and he'd heard about this teacher and Jatari, the name of the teacher, and he wanted to get teachings, but of course he couldn't just sneak out, because everywhere you go there's a whole entourage. Today we'd say paparazzi, but a whole entourage and cavalrymen, and you couldn't just sort of sneak out. So he did make some pretext to go out alone, and found his teacher and started getting teachings. And that teacher then advised him to go to Nalanda, which is Nalanda University as it was in today Bihar state. Today it's in ruins. If you go there, but an extensive monastery where all the great scholars that we study, pretty much it all comes back to that in large part due to, a lot to Atisha. So he, a few times he had requested his father to be relieved of his princely duties and had been told no, but at a certain point where his father saw he was very serious in following this Buddhist path, actually allowed him to go. And then he had it said that, he got extensive teachings. Normally you ordained and then got the extensive teachings, but he did it the other way around. And he said he had this dream, and in the dream he was having lunch with the Buddha, as you would, of course, with a whole lot of monks, and he was at the end of the row because he wasn't ordained. And the Buddha went, "Who's that person at the end of the row who's not even ordained? What's stopping him? What's holding him back?" And then he woke from that dream and realized, okay, it's time. He ordained. And so he studied at all the vast texts at Nalanda. And Nalanda was such that to get in the gate, to even get in, to enter, the gatekeeper would give you an exam right there and then. I guess these days we do it online, your entrance exam. But it was pretty high philosophy exam. So you had to know a lot of stuff. So it was said that even like at least by the age of 17, he'd already had, now this is a specialty of the teacher, a direct perceptual realization of emptiness. He'd realized the nature of reality. Okay, just setting the standard a bit high here. So he already had that, and he was renowned for being able to defeat in debate. There's a whole system of debate, of using logic and so forth, very precise. All the great scholars of the non-Buddhist schools. So at the time in India, it was like, if you were defeated in debate, you had to take on whatever tenet, school, belief system, whatever, that one who defeated you. So it was serious stuff. You had to follow that path. So if you lost the debate, you were going to be following whichever pandit defeated you. So it was pretty serious, right? Anyway, so he defeated all of them. So he had, you know, great extensive studies in India, and he studied there for like 12 years under various teachers. Like his various teachers would just direct him. You go to that teacher, you go to that teacher, you go to that teacher. I mean, our system is a little bit different these days, but that's how it was. And so he had a great foundation in the philosophical studies. And then he had this question, what's the quickest way to enlightenment? Now, maybe we have this question. I think His Holiness the Dalai Lama was, somebody asked one time, is there a swifter way? Is there a faster way to enlightenment? His Holiness cried because he knows, you know, the Buddha manifested like the path over 3 countless great eons, that whole progress. So it's like, oh, could I have it instantly? No. So anyway, in response to his inquiries, it said that, you know, he would be like at Bodh and he'd hear these statues talking, okay? And, you know, if somebody's aspiring to enlightenment, what's the swiftest way? The practice of bodhicitta. So he kept getting this. And then he had a direct line to Tara. So to be able to directly communicate with a Buddha, you have to have some pretty high realizations. I remember years ago, I don't know, you've probably heard of Margaret Olley, who was a great artist, great Australian artist. And I used to visit her, and she had her Tara statue there, and she says, you know, Tara talks to me. I went, oh, really? What does she say? She never told me what she said. I'd really like to know what Tara said. So he had that direct line, and Tara also saying bodhicitta is the way, develop the, we say, method side of the lineage. So Tara, she's a little bit hiding behind Medicine Buddha there. She said, we've got the Taras. I keep visualizing this wall with our 21 Taras, plus this one in the center here. Apparently they're on their way. We'll see soon, which is fantastic. And there's a whole other teaching related to Atisha around the 21 Taras, which we won't go into here. So then Lama Atisha went to Indonesia to get the bodhicitta teachings from Lama Salingpa. So Lama Salingpa was a Sudvanadvipa king. So that was the area in which he was in, I believe, Sumatra and in Jambi. Again, I went there. First time I went to Indonesia, I really wanted to go to where Lama Salingpa was. Anyway, I went to Jambi with a friend. We were both doing the same pilgrimage retreat, and we went there first. And I didn't. Anyway, so there's a whole extensive complex of ruins, but there were like 70 temples in this whole vast monastic university in Indonesia, which is now in ruins, and just some of the ruins are being excavated and I wouldn't say necessarily restored, excavated. So there are, and they were connected by a system of canals because you've got to have water. And so this was where Lama Salingpa was believed to have been. Again, when Candrila was at Chenrezig Institute, one of my friends there who lived in Indonesia a long time, and she had some photos that said, this is the mound of the hill where Lama Salingpa's abode actually was. And Candrila, when my friend was showing it to her, took the iPad and put it on the crown of her head, and then the Geshes came running to see what the important thing was. So it is an area of inquiry as to, because it's very important, this, where was the transmission, the lineage of these teachings given that came from the Buddha Maitreya. So here we're talking about the vast, the profound, vast lineage of Maitreya, the method side, the bodhicitta side, compassion, which is engaging in action. So it's quite fascinating because these days we don't necessarily think of Indonesia as being a Buddhist place, although even His Holiness is very interested, Lama Zopa Rinpoche is very interested, Kandrila is very interested in finding where these transmissions have been given. And there's also near Borobudur in Java, a monastery, Mendut, and there's an abbot there who says he's the protector of Mendut, and right there's a Maitreya, this tiny little temple. And when I've gone there with different lamas, we've done extensive pujas there. You know, there's tiny little spaces, and then the tour guides are saying, "Oh, come on, get out the next lot," until they see you doing serious puja, and then they just let you go and help you out, and it's fantastic, you know. Anyway, so there's a lot of inquiry as to that whole lineage, and definitely because Lama Atisha had this connection with Tara. There are like, there's a Tara temple there. There's a lot of evidence of that as well in Indonesia. Yeah.
Is it understood that Salimpa, or is it because Salimpa had the complete teachings of
Correct.
Bodhicitta?
Yes, from Maitreya.
From Maitreya. Okay.
Yeah.
So Salimpa didn't have another teacher that he received there, but it was a direct reception? Or
it's understood to be, and this is what the inquiry is, that Maitreya gave those, he had the direct teachings from Maitreya.
Right, okay.
On ornament of clear realization and so forth, that all the bodhicitta teachings. And so that's what's been really interesting. And so
Unusual, we had like the complete,
yeah,
the only one with the complete teaching.
Yes, and that's why Lama Atisha went there and wanted the complete, because he wanted the complete teaching. So he went there to receive those. It took about 13 months by boat to get there. And he went along and he had 125 students with him, so it wasn't a small boat. But even when he arrived there, and you know, when you see like the history of Indonesia and particularly Sumatra, this was a trading route, you know, so it was a well-established trading route already. So that's how they were, I guess, able to go. But even when he arrived, he didn't go straight to Lama Salimpa. He went. They arrived there, and for about 10 days or so, he met with students of Lama Salimpa's and checked out, is he the real deal? Are they authentic teachings? And, you know, what teachings is he giving? So at least 10 days of checking out before he went directly to Salimpa. And then after a while, you know, the students said to Lama Salimpa, there's this amazing, great scholar, because it was already very renowned in India as being their greatest teacher and in high demand. So, anyway, so eventually he, Lama Salimpa said, you know, bring him to me. And of course he came and made mandala offering, prostrations, did the whole ritual offerings, requesting the teachings, having checked out. And of course, Lama Salimpa's response was, well, what you're asking for is a lot. It's going to take a long time. Are you prepared to stay here 12 years? Yes, whatever it takes. So he did, and received that whole transmission of teachings. And so then, having done that, returned to India, and then was requested to teach at Vikramashila. It was another monastic university institution, very scholarly and so forth. So he was teaching there. And so you could see he'd had all the wisdom teachings, all the bodhicitta teachings, and both. And it said that he had the complete teachings of sutra and tantra, and he had, established those realizations in his mind. So he had everything. Meanwhile, in Tibet, in Tibet, the king Trisong Detsen, first in the 8th century, invited Shantarak Shita and then Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, to establish the Dharma in Tibet. And that did happen. But then subsequently, people had got confused, they had eroded the teachings. And also from the 8th century, there was a king, Langdharma, who was anti-Dharma, right? Anti the Buddha's teachings. And so made it very difficult to suppress the teachings and so forth. And so teachings weren't as accessible. And when they were, people were practicing Tantra without having a foundation of Sutra, or they didn't know how the two connected, or, those practicing pure Vinaya, which we say pure moral conduct, thought they were better than the ones Tantra, and they thought they were better than them. So you could see even within the Dharma, there was, we say it's all teachings of the Buddha. Don't contradict any of it. Don't, we question, but, don't say, oh, I'm better than those practitioners down the road or anything like that. It's all the teachings of the Buddha. So that's our attitude. But this had been eroded because people they didn't have the teachings, right? And so it came to the point in an area of, at the time of Atisha, area of Tibet, where there was another king who was very anti the Dharma in that area. And there was a great Dharma king, Yeshi and he thought, oh, we have to do something about reviving the Dharma here. We've got to get one of these Indian scholars to come. He hadn't heard of Atisha, but he knew there had to be a great scholar. And so they started sending emissaries to Nalanda and to India. And Vikramashila, where Lama Atisha was. I think it took 3 times. So the first group that went, I think one died on the route. There were 3 of them. The other 2 stayed at the monastery and studied, which was useful when the subsequent ones came along because they could speak Tibetan. And so, anyway, so a long story short, it's a very long story, but this is the short version. And so a subsequent expedition, request to specifically for Lama Atisha, and these Tibetans that were living at the monastery had worded up the group and said, whatever you do, don't ask for Lama Atisha to come. Don't ask the abbot that, because they don't want to let go of Lama Atisha. He's the best teacher that there is in India, and he's in high demand, and they don't want to let him go. And so, okay, so they came in under the, I know this was by now the 3rd time, came in under the pretext of being there to study. They said, we're here to study, right? And so they came and were allowed in. What had happened in Tibet meantime, that Yeshi, because of this king, heard about all of this and was trying to revive the Dharma, and threw Yeshi in prison. And the price for his release was equivalent to his head in gold, the weight of gold, the weight of his head, however many kilos a head is. And oh, actually, no, it wasn't. It was the whole of his body. That's right. And he accumulated everything except, I think, the weight of his head. Yes. Anyway, there's different versions of the story. You get what I mean? A lot of gold. And Yeshi said, they collected this gold except for the weight of his head, so he wasn't going to be released yet. And Yeshi said, don't worry about me. Leave me in prison. I've died many lives. I've wasted many lifetimes. it's not important. What's important is that the Dharma gets revived here in Tibet. So take that gold and take it to India and offer it. Now he knew Lama Atisha, offer it to, so his nephew Jangchub, facilitated that process. So they went and actually, these ones who were pretending they were there just to study, devised a plan to meet secretly with Lama Atisha, who, when they explained the situation in Tibet, said, of course, of course I will come. Well, actually, he didn't say that. He had to check with Tara. So he checked with Tara. Very useful when you can just dial a Buddha. Excuse me, should I go? And Tara had the observation that this would be very good for Tibet, but not only for Tibet, for the continuation and flourishing of the Dharma in the world, not only in Tibet. And we see the results of that, but at the time, this is. And then she said, and not only that, but there's a very, you've got this special karmic connection with a student there or a person there who will become your chief student and will carry on that lineage beyond, right? And will keep that, the flourishing of the Dharma in the world. So that's very important to meet him. However, fine print, if you go to Tibet, your life will be shortened by 20 years. And so anyway, they, because the abbot still wasn't approving, they devised a system that he would just be going on pilgrimage around to various holy sites, which happened to make their way to Tibet. And then the entourage, the emissaries from Tibet said, oh, we have to fess up. We have to be honest about this. So they went to the abbot and said, and he was very angry. I told you we didn't want to let Atisha go. I'm still of that opinion. But then he said, okay. So he relinquished and said, okay, you can have him for 3 years. Now, it took 2 years to get to Tibet because I did pilgrimage all along the way. And then he did actually indeed stay there for 3 years at a place, Nari. And Nari, if we look like today, Nari Rinpoche, who we can say is the reincarnation of various past Nari lamas, is the youngest brother of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's a lay practitioner, and he did come at a few times, I think, with His Holiness Dalai Lama's visits to Australia. When he went to Tasmania, he says, this is what I want to, where I want to meditate. Great place for a retreat. Come on down. Yeah. We'll have you. Hasn't happened yet. He lives in Dharamsala, probably staying there. Anyway, it was nice to have that affirmation of how good the, Tasmania is very compact. You've got the mountains, you've got the cool air, you've got vast views. Like New Zealand as well. The Northerners like New Zealand as well for the same thing. Okay. All right. So here was Lama Atisha at Nari and met with the great, Dharma scholars of Tibet at the time and thought, why am I here? They seem to know quite a bit of stuff, but, they presented what they knew. But then when he asked them questions about Sutra and Tantra, they couldn't answer the question and said, oh, now I know why I'm here. And not only that, but on top of that, Jangchub made specific requests for the teachings and to clarify the Sutra teachings, the Tantra teachings and so forth. And then Lama Atisha, as a result, composed what we study now. It's a very brief text, a Lamp on the Path to Enlightenment. So he composed that in response to the request from Jamche, and he pays homage to Jamche as the good disciple, the good student, not because of any great other qualities apart from that he asked very good questions. So that's what makes you a good student, must be. asking good questions. I've discovered that every question's a good question because somebody, you know, you're not just asking it for yourself. So good to ask questions. It's a way of learning. So, so Lama Atisha was there, composed that, and gave other extensive teachings pretty much around that area of Nari. And at the end of the 3 years, it was like, okay, now it's time to go back to India. And they did indeed start on the way back to India until they got to the border, and there was warring going on. They couldn't get through. And so they sent a message back to the abbot saying, well, we did try. And along with the message to the abbot was a copy of the Lamp of Path to Enlightenment. Now, what happens with, you know, these authoritative texts? You just don't go, oh, thank you very much, great. They check it, all the great scholars in India check it and edit, you know, any this, any that, any qualms, and they just saw that it was such an amazing teaching that was so profound. They had the text and said, okay, you can pick a teacher. So he did indeed, his life, so he died when he was 72, I guess, instead of 92. So he lived for 17 years in Tibet. And hence we have all these rich teachings and the commentaries that come along. So I mentioned, and I know I'm spending a bit of time on this, on the whole sort of lineage, but it's really, really important that we know that we're following an authentic tradition, so that we know about, you know, yes, the greatness of the teacher in terms of following an authentic tradition. So what Lama Atisha did, he drew together on the foundation of what we say the two great trailblazers, which was a Sangha coming from the method side and Nagarjuna coming from the wisdom side. And so these two were predicted by the Buddha that they would be the great charioteers, they're called, or trailblazers. Lama Tsongkhapa in the Song of Experience says, I prostrate at the feet of Nagarjuna and a Sangha, ornaments of Jambudvipa. Jambudvipa is this world system, renowned throughout the 3 levels, who compose commentaries in accordance with the intention, that means the Buddha's intention, which means they were authorities, on the mother of the conquerors. The mother of the conquerors is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which then got elaborated in the Ornament of Clear Realization. It's all on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So hard to fathom. And so we get these two from the method side and the wisdom side, and conjoining that. And the Sangha they were both middle way school, or we say Madhyamika, middle way. They were both following the Mahayana, but a Sangha was like, you don't need to know the ins and outs of this. It comes along in basic program, but mind-only practitioner. And Nagarjuna, you know, basically founded the middle way consequent school. So this is the one that's of interest to us, because this is the foundation of our Gelugpa tradition. So in Liberation Palm of Your Hand, what I love is this whole map of who's who all the way back to Buddha. And at first you look at it and you go, well, I don't know who all these people are. But this is where it's a useful reference over time when you hear more teaching, go, oh, there's Lama Atisha. Now I know a little bit about Lama Atisha. Oh, Lama Tsongkhapa. Now I've heard about Lama Tsongkhapa. So you start to fill in and join how it all relates, and how we need to know that we're following an authentic tradition. Otherwise, look what happened in Tibet. Everyone got totally confused. And so Lama Atisha distilled these, you know, 2 aspects, the extensive deeds or vast lineage, and the profound lineage of the view of wisdom of emptiness. And then you've got all the teachers of those all the way down to Lama Atisha. So he conjoined the 2. And then he did indeed meet this, I won't go into the meeting. Oh, I'll just mention
maybe I will. So the key disciple then who carried these teachings on was John Tompa. And John Tompa wanted to meet with Atisha, and Atisha wanted to meet with John Tompa. And John Tompa heard that Atisha was having lunch with a benefactor. So he started out to go there to meet him. In the end, they met on the way because Atisha was coming away from that and he was going towards that. And because of their karmic connection, they recognized each other straight away, and the rest is history. So then John Tompa got all those teachings and, you know, passed that on through the lineage that we call the Kadampa masters, that Lama Zopa Rinpoche's got a book about the Kadampa teachings, which came from, was a teaching I very fortunately had the chance to be at in Root Institute, Bulgaria, in 2007 or 2008. But those teachings, which probably just started, but, you know, to see, okay, on the basis of that, without naming everyone in between, or the geshis of that tradition, all the way down to then Lama Tsongkhapa in the 14th century, and there we're in familiar territory, who established the Gulug tradition, you know, by bringing together this elaborate commentary on Atisha's teachings. And as he said, well, actually, Atisha's the author of this. So he says, I bow to Dipankara Atisha. So Dipankara, when Atisha ordained, his ordination name was Dipankara Sri Janana. So this was the name that he was given. He says, holder of the treasury of instructions that gathers together the important points completely and unmistakably of the paths of profound view and vast conduct. So those two lineage, the excellent lineages descending from the two great charioteers, from Nagarjuna and the Sangha. And we just got to think from the Buddha, bringing that all together. So, you know, we gradually develop, I think, over time an appreciation for just how profound it is to be able to establish our minds in that, in a sense of respect for these great lineage holders, and to learn more about that. Okay, so that's the history of how we got the Lamrim teachings. And before going on, I also just mentioned that in on the FPMT online website, there's also one of the programs that we have. It's called Living in the Path. And this was the teachings that Lama Zopa Rinpoche started in 2009 in North Carolina on Lama Atisha's lamp for the path, lamp on the path. And anyway, it was going to be 5 years. Started in 2009. I think the last one is 2016, but it wasn't every year. And it was going to be again this year online, but in August. So, you know, previously for myself, I somehow I had the karma to be at each one of these. Even like at least 2 of them, I wasn't expecting to go, maybe 3. But anyway, I managed to have been present at all of them. And I thought, oh, good, it's going to be online, so I can participate in this one. I thought we could show it in the Gompa. And
you were very excited.
I was very excited. Rinpoche recently did a divination, you know, to see what's most beneficial. And what's most beneficial for that one is to wait until people are face to face together again. So Rinpoche will indeed be in Singapore in August, but teaching on the Guru Puja. So, which was also a teaching that Rinpoche started some years ago. Anyway, at the last Lamp on the Path, Rinpoche said, you have to keep going. I haven't opened the text yet. I haven't started the text. There was one time when Rinpoche opened the book and we all took a collective breath in, and we didn't get to the first verse. So, but nonetheless, that body of teachings is vast from that. You know, it wasn't that Rinpoche wasn't teaching Lam Rim at all. It's vast teachings. And so that's all there on that living in the path, living in the path. Yeah. It's confusing. The book's called Lamp on the Path, all four the paths of enlightenment, and then living in the path, lamp on the path. It's all Lam Rim. It's all Lam Rim. And just, it was for me a, what do you say, sobering moment at that very first retreat. I was leading one of the discussion groups. So after lunch, you have a discussion group, just like at Copan, and discuss the topic and so forth, and have a tutorial, and you have teachings with Rinpoche, you have practices to do, and so forth. But this discussion group, anyway, there was one gentleman who came every single day to the discussion group. You know, people come and go, they, you know, want to do other things, they want to go for a walk, it's fine, they want to go to another discussion group, it's fine. He came every day. So I got very familiar over however many weeks it was. And towards the end, he was asking me, he was saying, he was retired, and he had spent the past year doing Lam Rim retreat at home, right? So actually, he'd gone through the Lam Rim. And this is where another show and tell, I didn't mention the more recent one, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the Lam Rim year. Maybe some of you have seen the Lam Rim year. And it's great because it goes through, you know, day by day. It's like a meditation you can do. You know, you follow it through for the year, and you've covered the whole Lam Rim, and then you start again and keep going. But it's wonderful. I mean, you don't have to do it prescriptively like that, but Rinpoche's made it very easy for our mind, you know, so many days on this and so many days on that and so many days on the other one, right? So here he was, he had, without that book, but he'd spent that, and he was like, do I go to Lama Zopa Rinpoche and now request further advice? That was his sort of parting question. And he had decided, no, I don't need to, I'll just do another year on the Lam Rim. And this is what indeed Rinpoche is encouraging people, if we can do. He had that opportunity to do that. And then as he was leaving the retreat, he was getting on the bus to go downtown, and I said goodbye. And then about half an hour later, we got the message that he'd been run over and killed. He'd been walking across the road to catch the bus from town and died. And you think, well, you died with Lam Rim, you know, because he was immersed in Lam Rim for the previous year. He was at a Lam Rim retreat, and he was planning his next Lam Rim retreat. And you think, I mean, we're all going to die sometime, but, you know, on one hand, you sort of shocked, hang on, I was just talking to him. But on the other hand, you say, well, I might as well die with Lam Rim on my mind, isn't it? So it was sobering. We all get these sobering moments, right? All right. So background. And so then so this is like laying down the path to enlightenment. And in our notes, as it says, you know, before we engage in a spiritual path, it's important to understand the foundation on which we can build that transformation. Actually, the word ch in Tibetan Dharma means literally transformation of the mind, or going from undisciplined mind to disciplined mind. So that's basically, you know, we say ch meaning Dharma, that's what it means. Okay, so we say, well, on the conviction that, yes, I do have Buddha nature. In other words, if I want to become a Buddha, I have to believe I've got the potential to become a Buddha. And I have to say, not all Buddhists believe that. You know, I'm prepared to accept that because the Buddha showed the way, and I'm hanging in there on the belief that it's possible, right? Because the Buddha showed it's possible, and then we've had so many highly realized beings who showed, it blows my mind, you know, some of the things they show and demonstrate. And it's just like, how can you do that? So we have Buddha nature, we have the potential. As the Buddha said, every being that has a mind possessor, is a potential Buddha, right? No matter whether you're a cockroach or a human being or whatever. Okay, so we develop conviction, faith in that we need we say the soil and the nutrients, as the Buddha always used, often was talking to people in rural areas, so he used those sort of farming or gardening type analogies, and we continue to use those. The soil and the nutrients, it's sort of like the solid stuff, the gritty stuff of what we need, and that's having this precious human rebirth, precious human life. Not only human life, but in what ways it's precious. And we'll come back down to that, hopefully today. If we don't get there today, it'll be next time, because it's part of, anyway. And then we need the water to nourish that, to soften our hearts, to open our minds, which is the teachings, the spiritual teachings. And then the sunlight, just like the lamp on the path of a teacher, illuminating the path, illuminating the darkness, is our spiritual teachers, like the sun rising in our world, you know, who make it all clear to us. So we need all of these, or appreciation of all of these. Okay, so that gives us a solid foundation for then engaging in the spiritual path. So then we look at what are we talking about? What does this path look like? So I didn't check if people got the course notes and so forth sent to you. Yep. Oh, okay. So who can help with that? If you write to sbc@highagreeva.org.au, and you'll get the notes sent to you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks, Nat. So I'm looking at this. You'll see it's up. You got that? No, it's yeah. So you would have got it on your email. They're on your email. We're saving the environment. So this, I like this particular chart. I use it frequently. It's by the person who, you know, just put it in this particular format is Emily Sue. So she was a graduate of the first master's program at Institute Lama Tsongkhapa, and at least since 2009, if not earlier, with teaching basic program at Seichen Ling in San Francisco. And and in fact, this is one of the charts for the basic program. There's gazillions of charts, but I like this because it's really simple for my simple mind. So you'll see here, it says the 3 scopes, or 3 levels of practice of Lam Rim, or as we're advised, and the Lama Tsongkhapa reminds us that it's for one individual practitioner as we develop more and more our capacity. And it says what to meditate on, or get teachings on and meditate on at each of these levels. Before we even start, there are 2 criteria. So these are 2 other preliminaries, which is having an appreciation for this precious human life and relying on our spiritual teacher, having checked out the teacher. So we see how Lama Atisha showed checking out a teacher. And then, you know, when we do the next module, we look at that in terms of how do we develop this reliance on a spiritual teacher. But we need somebody who can show us, you know, be the sunlight in our lives and show us. Well, you might have those teachers in your life already. If we don't, we've got Shakyamuni Buddha and we've got all these amazing, great lineage lamas. In fact, when I was at Kopan Monastery one time, one of the students said, Lama Lundrup, who was the previous abbot, has just told me my root guru is Shantideva, and he's sort of dead. So what do I do? And I said, well, you better be reading Bodhisattva's Way of Life. I'd say that's your go-to, at least a good start, right? So it's very interesting. I mean, in this life, you know, a lot of people had Lama Yeshe as their teacher. He's passed away, or, you know, other lamas, His Eminence Chodron Rinpoche and so forth. And they still, you know, they still talk to their root guru, right? Okay, so if we're looking at these stages on the path, these are we need to have some foundation already of this appreciation. And then we go through the initial scope or small scope, or sometimes called lower scope. I like it to think of these scopes as like scopes on a, you know, when you have a camera and you widen the lens and you widen it, greater capacity, greater capacity, greater capacity. You see more, you encompass more, able to do more, rather than thinking of it as a hierarchy like this, because then we can get a bit hierarchical. And even though, you know, when we say the Refuge and Body prayer that we say at the beginning of teachings, that comes from Lama Atisha. So then having an understanding of who Lama Atisha is can, you know, just really make that even more special, you know, to us. Oh, that comes from Lama Atisha. Well, just, you know, to be able to see that lineage. It wasn't just something someone made up somewhere. And Lama Atisha didn't just make it up. He relied on Asanga and Nagarjuna, and they relied on the Buddha's teachings, etc., etc. So here it has all the topics of each scope that are the, shall we say, primary topics to get teachings on, to meditate on, because first of all, we have to get the teachings, as Geshe Kelsang Wangmo said when, you know, when, as a teenager or whatever, going to Dharamsala and saying, you know, at the end of their holiday with her mum, she says, you go home, I'm going to stay here and meditate, and then realised, I don't know what to meditate on. I've got to get the teachings. So the next 20 years, then she had something to meditate on. It's not that you don't meditate along the way like we're doing here. Of course, we meditate along the way, but we understand. So these topics here, you can see in this initial scope, are topics indeed that we're unpacking as we go through discovering Buddhism. And so this initial scope, it says seeking long-term happiness. Long-term in this case meaning beyond just this life, just like Lama Atisha had renounced the affairs of this life, wasn't so concerned. It's a long term. I want to make sure that I continue on this spiritual path. And so I want to make sure that I get another precious human rebirth and to be able to continue on the path and have the intelligence to do that and all the conditions coming together, right, to do that. So that's the aspiration, striving for a good rebirth. When it says renounce this life, it's not giving up this life, but giving up what we say, the meaningless activities and affairs of this life, as much as we can, without, you know, it's a lot to ask for. Already that, you know, is quite profound. It's going against the grain. You know, the Kadampa masters talked about this. The more you go on in your Dharma practice, the more you're out of step with society. So you start to maybe feel like, oh, what conversation do I have with the family now? Or friends or work colleagues or whatever. Could be awkward. It's a very courageous step to take. And then on the basis, foundation of that, the intermediate scope or middle scope. And here you've widened the lens further and you're saying, okay, I've learned about true suffering and the causes of suffering, which is the first teaching of the Buddha. Four Noble Truths, at least those two aspects, it says, no matter where I'm reborn, it's going to be in the nature of suffering. Have I had enough of suffering? Yes, thank you very much. Don't want any more. And so we're striving for liberation, which is a state of mind, you know, to be free, because we have the confidence that I can be free of all these disturbing states of mind, which indeed Lama Atisha did at a very young age, and direct perceptual realization of emptiness. So that becomes your focus, you know, and this is called individual liberation, for myself to be free of all the causes of suffering, or the causes of our woes and so forth. So this renunciation for samsara, striving for liberation, nirvana, and you know, it's I think module 9 is samsara and nirvana. So you know, we're sort of, this is just an overview. And then the great scope is saying, hang on a minute, that's all very well for myself, but what about all these other beings? You know, my family, my friends, the animals, and all the other beings. What about them? All my kind mother sentient beings, you know? Can't just ignore them. And so then we, principally, the practice of 6 perfections, but we talk about the mind of bodhicitta, and like taking the bodhisattva vows and what that means, and what the mind of bodhicitta, these whole extensive teachings that that Lama Salingpa went all that way and spent 12 years in Indonesia to receive all of those teachings, because it's on that foundation, plus an understanding of Tantra, that we eventually attain Buddhahood. And so it's a long haul. It's a very long haul, but this is just the map of it all. And it said that, you know, it's like these teachings are like the 4 corners of like a tablecloth. You know, you got a tablecloth on your table, on your kitchen table, whatever. And if you pull one corner, all the other corners are going to come along with it. It's not like they're left behind. And so the 4 corners represent the 3 levels of practice plus Tantra, so the 4 of them, and how it's presented in terms of Tantra. And that's the last module we do. Whenever we get to that one, is, you know, that we need that, you know, at the end of all of this extensive path to attain Buddhahood, but not, you know, as they made the mistake in Tibet of not having the foundation of the sutra teachings, in fact, not having the foundation of the Lam Rim, which you need for Tantra anyway. You need that foundation, you need an understanding of it, right? So they got all very confused, and that's the danger of what can happen. Yes, stories, questions, comments?
I can't remember what the detail of where it
Sure.
appeared in the text was, but I think it was Songso Khyentse Rinpoche was talking about that concept of it being a long haul,
Yeah.
if you will. He said there's a story of a bodhisattva talking to the Buddha who said, like, well, like, how long have I done so far? And how long have I got to go? He said, oh, you've done 2 infinite eons, so you've got 1 infinite eon to go. He's like, oh man, like, it just seems like forever. And they're sitting by a fire, and he said that infinite eon last is as short as that ember popping out of the fire.
Yeah, that's
the term was not as long as, but it's as short as.
Yes. So that's an interesting point. What's your name?
Matt.
Matt. Yeah, sorry.
We met a VI in.
That's right.
Hello.
That's right. I was like, I know this guy. You still live around the corner. You used to live around the corner. It's true. When we talk about these countless great eons, and it feels like, oh, that's how long is a great eon? So there are different analogies used. One is that, you know, you have the great mountain. If every 100 years your cloak brushes against the mountain, the time that it takes for the mountain to wear down, you go, okay, is that what a countless great eon is? There's many different analogies. However, as Matt said, you know, the Bodhisattva talking to the Buddha and being told you've still got a countless great eon to go, you've done 2. I mean, I would be like, great, I've done 2. Rather than, oh, you haven't even started yet. Be careful of the questions you ask. And but that great eon, that countless great eon, can be as short as the ember in the fire. So it's not literally a time span. It's the equivalent accumulation of merit that we have. So, you know, another presentation on the paths is the 5 paths. The first path is the path of accumulation of, and then if you've got that, even though it looks like, oh, you don't strive to Buddhahood until the great scope, not so, because here we are following the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa, where indeed the most profound view of the Buddha's teachings to attain enlightenment. So we're already setting our bodhicitta motivation as we learn more and more about that and develop our capacity. So it's already much more vast already, empowers our practice. So it's sort of like it is like Lama Tisha. What's the quickest way? The quickest way is bodhicitta. So if we cultivate that mind from the very beginning, and then in our refuge and bodhicitta prayer, not just refuge, but refuge and bodhicitta. So even though we say the words and say the words and say the words, it's still putting those imprints in that direction and that motivation in our mind to be able to get there, even in fact, necessarily, while we're doing all these initial topics and contemplations, because they're very, very important. You know, and the very first one on death and impermanence, the very first teaching and last teaching of the Buddha was on impermanence. So you can see how profound and necessary that is. So it's a good point to keep in mind. It's not a literal time frame. You know, we can accumulate that very quickly.
You also said that with the mind of, feels like it's contextual if I'm throwing it in.
Yes.
With the mind of say, a regular person, that prospect seems just enormous and insurmountable. He said, however, with the mind or the developed mind of a bodhisattva, he was teaching to I think a Taiwan audience at the time. He said, you know, at a mahjong party, where he goes, you're having like the best time, and then all of a sudden you realize the sun's come up and you just don't want to leave. He said, with the mind, it said it's almost like it transforms. It's like being at the mahjong party. Ooh. Where you just don't want to leave, where like the mind is not experiencing the same suffering that you might assume is there. It's actually working with reality in a way that becomes enjoyable.
So you have a much more powerful mind, and that, you know, as a bodhisattva, and depending on what ground, bodhisattva ground you're on, is that you're already got a very powerful, shall we say, blissful state of mind that doesn't want to stop, that wants to keep going. Because already, first level bodhisattva, you can emanate 100 bodies. How useful is that, you know? And I just like to have a few arms, extra arms sometimes. But and then next ground, bodhisattva ground, you can emanate 1,000, and then it goes, you know, it multiplies exponentially. And of course, a Buddha can multiply as many bodies as atoms of the universe, and so forth, so that you're enhancing your capacity. And even we can say, okay, I'm L plate training bodhisattva. that is profound. I like being an L plate training bodhisattva. You know, and as long as we're still taking a step forward, a step forward, a step forward each day, no matter how many steps back, we're still taking a step forward in that direction. And that's what Lama Tisha very kindly set out for us. Keep going in this direction. Just keep going in this direction. And it makes it super, super clear. You know, it gives us the whole structure, the whole framework, what to do. Brilliant. Okay. Are we going time? Okay, so I'll just go through the how to make use of the teachings. And this is, again, it's all that is classically presented as an introduction to Lam Rim. And you may well have heard this analogy before of the 3 pots, the way to listen. So, oh, actually, before we get to the 3 pots, I want to get there in a couple of minutes. First of all, we get the teachings. You know, look at what Lama Tisha did. He studied extensively for years and 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 years, just like our Geshis, you know, studied for, you know, 20 odd years and so forth. Actually, I think His Holiness Dalai Lama also, I believe, did his Geshe degree, for, I remember, his exam at 15. At a young age, anyway. And you would say, oh, you had the goods already coming that you had access to from past lives. But I'm pretty sure, anyway, it was very early. And having had Geshe Santan at Vajrayana Institute at one time told us what it was like when you were going for that final exam. It was International Sangha Day. And I said, Geshe, could you just give us a talk? And he said, yeah. So he said, of course, you've done all that study for all these years and the 5 great classics and 5, they say it's equivalent to a PhD. I say it's equivalent to at least 5. It's 5 years on each one and they know it inside out, back to front and everything. Who knows that when they finish their PhD? Oh, well, maybe you do for a while. Anyway, so he said, you know, it's like you get these 3 questions and you've only got a certain amount of time. And so you have to decide which question very quickly, which question. You said, you don't spend your time deciding which question to answer. You answer the one that you're most familiar with and that you can pull out all the references and debate most confidently. It doesn't matter whether it's the one of most interest. Just like go for that one, because otherwise you, wish I answered that one. Will I answer that one? Will I answer that one? And it's like, kazum. So no pressure, right? It's an oral exam with people who know their stuff. All right. So, yeah, so we listen, we get the teachings, we absorb them. And haven't we got so many teachings? I've already exhausted you with the idea of what's available on the Lam Rim. So it's like information gathering. We gather all that information, we study, we look at different commentaries, different aspects. And then we reflect on that, and we reflect on that in discussion with each other, which, sorry, folks, I haven't allowed that time today. And then we take that into meditation. We take that into on our meditation cushion, and, you know, just, we can take a topic like this, you know, the whole year, just one topic for our whole life, even just think, I'm going to take that topic for my whole life, just the first one, whatever, however much time we want to spend on it, to really, because at the end of our life, what's going with us, not the body, only our mind. And it said, whatever, and then getting transmissions of teachings. If you get a transmission of the Lam Rim, you've got it in your mental continuum, but even like reading it and getting the teachings on it is great blessings for our mind. And it says, then when you're achieve the Mahayana path of accumulation, the realizations arise in your mind. Wow. Fantastic. I take that on faith. Okay, so then we use this analogy of the 3 pots. I have to end on this one. So how not to listen. And I don't think anyone here would be in the first category of upside down pot. You've already made up your mind and you're only here to refute what someone else says. So the only example, which is not exactly this one, but it's about checking our motivation. So at this Copan November course where I was leading the discussion, and just discussing the fact that one time Lama Zopa Rinpoche was teaching and it was really hot, and one of the students visualized offering Rinpoche a glass of water. And Rinpoche looked up and said, "Thank you." Right? And then this student who had heard that story came back to the discussion group and he said, "I tried that. It didn't work." I was just like, check your motivation. Check your motivation. Was it pure? Okay, upside down pot. Leaky pot. Now we might relate to that, in one ear and out the other. You know, fantastic teaching. What was it about? I don't know, but it was great. If it was so great, why don't you remember it? What was great about it that you remember? It felt good. Great, that's good. It'll get you back to another teaching. Which is skillful. And then the dirty pot. We're in samsara. We have our root ignorance that confuses our minds. And this is, you know, all our filters and biases and everything else that comes along. We all have that to some extent, but we're wanting to get more clarity. So that, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful always to just have this open, spacious mind ready to not just absorb and take, the Buddha said, don't just, because I said it, you know, take it like you check up. We've got to check it up in our experience, hence the meditation, to really integrate it into our whole being, our mind, our heart, you know, drench our mind with the Lam Rim. Okay, good place to stop for today. So having set us on this, you know, outline, then we're having a week break because I'm going away on retreat for a week, so I'll be here. So you've got a lot of references, a lot you can read, reflect on, and we'll unpack each of these scopes in the subsequent weeks coming up. And right now we can dedicate all our merits. Page 16, is it? We'll just do the 2 verses under Idam Guru Ratna. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the precious body mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you.